20 on our Open Series leaderboard. He was looking to qualify for the Players' Championship this year. Majors with a Grand Prix Championship recently. Now he's playing Grixis Control, an article and a deck that he wrote about on the Select Side of Star City Games. So if you haven't checked that out, I certainly implore you to do so after the match. But not during this. We see a Gataxian probe here from Scherer to lead things off in round number 2. Majors will show his hand. We'll see exactly what he's up to with his Grixis Control deck. A Terminate, an Inquisition of Kozilek, a Kolaghan's Command, a very popular card in Modern, along with a bunch of lands over there. So Majors is a very big proponent of Jace Vryn's Prodigy this weekend.
Enough of an advocate for 4 copies in the main deck. Essentially more copies of Snapcaster Mage here. Pairs very nicely, of course, with things like Lightning Bolt and Terminate and Serum Visions and so forth.
And what he really wrote about is the combination of, you want to get into a grindy game with Jace and Liliana as a team. You're able to flip Jace very easily. Liliana, of course, promotes grindy games. And then when you have a Merfolk Looter effect going, or it flips into a Planeswalker, pretty difficult to kill Planeswalker, may I add, because there's a lot of loyalty when it does flip into the Telepath Unbound. He likes that combination. We're going to see how it works out from this weekend. It's more theory crafting than anything that he's been doing with the deck, and now he's going to try to put it into practice. He's already got one win under his belt, and he'll start off with Inquisition of Kozilek here off of Polluted Delta.
Yeah, the addition of Jace is a pretty huge cost for a deck like this that's otherwise more or less immune to cards like Abrupt Decay and Lightning Bolt. You don't really care if Snapcaster Mage is getting hit with removal spells, and Tasigur is immune. So putting in a creature that can just be killed is a really big cost and says a lot about how powerful Michael must think this card is in the deck.
We'll see Caleb Scherer's hand. A couple copies of Gataxian Probe, along with a Grape Shot, a Past in Flames, and a Desperate Ritual. Thought Scour was cast in response to the Inquisition. So you got an idea of exactly what Scherer's working with. Majors knows exactly what he's up against at this point. It's very clearly a Storm deck. Scherer's hand, not particularly good right now. It could turn anything, though, with those probes.
Yep. Now, for those of you who are more familiar with Legacy's version of Storm, the Modern version is noticeably less powerful. The deck really needs Pyromancer's Ascension, Goblin Electromancer, or a lot of stuff and Past in Flames to kill. Not very easy to do from a low base.
Inquisition does take care of a Gataxian Probe. Here's another probe from Scherer. He's going to go down to 16, paying the Phyrexian mana. Spell Snare was the draw for Majors this turn. You see the Kolaghan's Command and Terminate still there, along with a couple of lands in hand. Among them, it appears Creeping Tar Pit.
Spell Snare, a nice card against Storm as it tags both the Electromancer and Ascension.
And Morphos, too, which was the draw for Scherer. And he'll just have to pass the turn back. No second land for Caleb. Majors will take a draw step. Does have a semi-dead one in hand with the Terminate. However, Inquisition, a pretty nice draw. So he'll fire that off, see what Scherer was able to pick up off the cantrip and the draw step here. And you see the hand of Past in Flames, Pyretic Ritual, Desperate Ritual, Grape Shot, and Manamorphose. So we'll see what Michael does want to take.
I mean, by taking the Gataxian Probe, the logical follow-up here is Manamorphose, which is what Michael takes here. Caleb's hand is so bad and needs so much help that Michael is trying to attack the cantrips right now, which makes a lot of sense.
Now, one thing to note here is Scherer does draw a second land, play the mountain, pass the turn back. Major's going to sacrifice that Scalding Tarn. Is that even though Scherer's hand is pretty bad at this point, he's not anything pressure.
No.
Not a lot going on Major's side of the table. So Scherer definitely has some time to draw out of this, discard barrage that has happened thus far.
The really threatening cards from this stage are Snapcaster Mage, as that's a clock and another discard spell via Flashback of Inquisition. Tasigur and Liliana the Veil would be especially bad for Caleb right now. His deck's all about assembling critical mass, and I don't think he can afford to get hit with repeat discard turn after turn.
Creeping Tar Pit is the land there for Majors. Scherer just draws, passes the turn back. Some sort of clock is what Majors is looking for. He'll sacrifice a Scalding Tarn, going down to at least 17. We'll see how low he wants to go. Looks like he's going to go with a basic land here. Colors do not appear to be an issue for Michael at this point. We'll see what the foul play is going to be. I'd be surprised if he just sends that Tar Pit in.
No, with Spell Snare in hand, he's got a lot of insurance against Caleb drawing, even Caleb drawing well from this spot. I think he wants to leave that up if he can.
Well, Tasigur is pretty nice to have here. Also, Major's delving away in such a fashion that he's able to leave Inquisition of Kozilek in the graveyard to perhaps bring back with Tasigur. For now, Scherer's going to play a copy of Desperate Ravings. That will resolve. Spell Snare will not be baited out here. So Scherer will have to draw two and now discard a card at random. 6 cards in hand, little random roll. This card will go away, Past in Flames. Tough one to hit there, actually, but to be fair, it does have flashback.
Yeah. May actually be the card Caleb is most excited to lose.
Here's a sleight of hand. Scherer will take a look at the top 2 cards of his deck, gets to take 1. Electromancer and Serum Visions are the cards he's looking at. He has made his selection. The other card will go to the bottom of the deck. Does Scherer have a land to play is the question. It appears the answer is no, so we're going to go back Major's way with an active Tassiger. Still has that Spell Snare in hand as well. Now for Majors, you've got your Disruption in. Now you just want to get this game over with before Scherer is able to build up a critical mass of Storm cards.
Remember, he's got the Tar Pit in play as well, so his clock could potentially be pretty fast. Just wants to sit back on Spell Snare here and an activation of Tassiger.
Serum Visions to draw here for Scherer. Has a Thought Scour in hand. He's going to start with a Thought Scour, targeting himself. Once he gets more cards in the graveyard, so Desperate Ravens is 1, Manamorphose is 2, he'll draw a card. It's a Shivan Reef. Land is pretty big there.
Yeah, if Caleb has any shot of getting back into this one, it has to start with just drawing some lands here and unlocking his hand.
Serum Visions now. Scherer will draw. Looks like he picked up another land. Now he'll scry 2. Pyromancer Ascension and Sleight of Hand are the cards he's looking at on top of his deck. So we'll see where those 2 cards do go. Not sure he has enough time to actually set up Ascension at this point, and he knows his opponent has Spell Snare in hand.
And, you know, this is a big point advantage that Caleb just took here, going from 12 to 11, as that means Michael can attack down to 7 next turn, and then Creeping Tar Pit plus Tassiger finishes off the game. So it's actually a full turn off of Michael's clock.
A Tassiger activation will turn over Blackcliff Cleaves and a Bloodstained Mire. So favorable activation there from Tassiger, as Inquisition is going to go back to the grip for Majors. I'm sure he wants to know what the heck's going on over there, and Inquisition will allow him to do just that. Majors will start off by casting the discard spell. And we're going to see the goods here from Scherer. He's got an Electromancer, a Pyretic Ritual, a Shivan Reef, a Serum Visions, a Desperate Ritual, and a Grape Shot. You can't forget about the Past in Flames that's in the graveyard as well.
And now the Spell Snare in Michael's hand becomes so powerful because Caleb has to spend 2 mana up front initiating something with the hope that it gives him mana by resolving. And if Michael dead ends that, I don't think Caleb has the mana or time to go off.
And as you mentioned in this format, the Storm deck is not as powerful as it is in Legacy. So in Legacy, you've got 1 mana starters like Dark Ritual and Moxes and Lotus Petals and stuff like that. In this one, you're starting off with 2 mana spells.
Cabal Ritual jumps you from 2 to 5.
Yeah.
It's a lot more effort in Modern to get it to work.
Here comes Tassiger. Scherer going to go down to 7. It appears Major's going to leave a lot of mana open. He's going to play Blood Crypt untapped. You mentioned that activation of Shivan Reef, putting Scherer down to 7. Full turn, even though it didn't feel like it.
Yeah, it's a big point.
See if Major's any other action this turn.
It's not like Caleb couldn't cast his spells. He's got to try.
Of course.
But going from 12 to 11 is a big deal there.
Pyromancer's Ascension is the draw. Scherer trying to figure out if there's a way that he can navigate through this situation. I'm not convinced that there is. Spell Snare by itself is very hard for him to get through. Snare not a card that sees a ton of Modern play, though it is pretty good in this format. There's a lot of relevant spells.
It was a little bit more popular, I think, when Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant were staples of decks. It still comes up plenty, but you can only put so many copies of it in your main deck.
There's Pyromancer's Ascension. To me, this is the bait spell. If I'm Michael, and Michael's got all the information now, this is the only card he didn't know about, and this came off of the top of Caleb's deck. I like what he's doing here, which is taking a look at the graveyard, getting an idea of what Caleb has in his hand, what he can do with this, because I don't think Majors needs to counter this.
Because Caleb still needs to play a 2-mana spell to get the ball rolling, and then you stop him there, and you attack for lethal.
I think Majors realizes that and says, yeah, you got it. So here's the Serum Visions. That'll trigger, as there's the Serum Visions in the graveyard. Sleight of Hand is the draw. Take a look at 2 cards here. These 2 cards that Caleb is scrying with don't really matter very much because I'm not sure he's going to get another turn. He's going to put both those cards on the bottom. Perhaps he's going to hope that Majors forgets to activate that Creeping Tar Pit, but that is rather unlikely. Major's going to play a copy of Kolaghan's Command now. Looks like it might be the 2 damage in shock mode. Excuse me, 2 damage in discard mode. And now here's a Snapcaster Mage. And that'll do it for this particular game. Michael Major's going to win game number 1 over Caleb Scherer. Grixis Control up a game over Storm. Spell Snare really putting Scherer in a lot of trouble that game. Not able to actually work his way past the 1-mana counterspell.
And that's a big victory here for Michael because you saw, Terminates, Lightning Bolts, that kind of stuff floating around in Michael's deck. He gets to cut that stuff for much more powerful cards in games 2 and 3.
To the sideboard we go. We take a look at Scherer's to start since he'll be on the play for game number 2. He's got 4 copies of Lightning Bolt, 3 Empty the Warrens, 3 Hurkyl's Recall, 3 Blood Moons, and then 2 copies of Echoing Truth. You have to imagine the Blood Moons are going to come in. I think they're pretty good against Michael. Feels
like a Blood Moon matchup. Now Michael does have 2 Swamps and 2 Islands in the deck, so he can work around it, but his deck is color sensitive, and he is also just going to draw dual lands randomly in some games. So I think the Blood Moons come in. I also don't mind Empty the Warrens in this kind of matchup. When you're getting attacked by discard spells, it can be really tough to assemble the kill via Grape Shot. Just demands a lot of resources. Empty, you could fire off, with a storm count of even 4 or 5, and that's going to win the game a good percentage of the time.
What do we see for Majors? Since you mentioned those Terminator cards, he's probably going to want to take out.
So 2 copies of Pyroclasm, 2 copies of Spellscape, 2 copies of Dragon's Claws, a Thoughtseize, 3 copies of Dispel, 2 Nile Spellbombs, 3 Moldrains. I think the Nile Spellbombs, the Dispels, and the Thoughtseizes are all easy cards to bring in. They all have utility breaking up the combo, attacking the graveyard, or countering spells. I also think the 2 copies of Pyroclasm are fine to bring in here as they answer Electromancer and they hedge against Empty the Warrens if Caleb has that in the sideboard. I don't know if Michael will necessarily bring it in, but between, he's got all these cards like Kolaghan's Command, Lightning Bolt, Terminate. It feels like he has the room to play a card like Pyroclasm that might be dead in a bunch of games, but ensures him against Empty the Warrens should Caleb bring that in.
Well, these players will work on getting some sideboard cards into their deck. Get ready for game number 2. Scherer will be on the play. But in the meantime, we will talk about SCG Game Night, very popular promotion. And every week in August, and somehow this month is almost over, you can still get Furious George.
Yeah, but you are running out of time. September is coming right around the corner, and we have the Kraken ready to go for that. It is too late to get signed up for the September kit. But if you want to get your store signed up for October, and I have not seen this yet. Finally, the Hippo. We've demanded it for a better part a year and change, I think. It's here. Not quite as terrorizing as I would have liked, but still, the Hippo kit, StarCityGames.com/game night. Get signed up today.
This is living proof that if you keep doing something, people will give in to your demands.
Right.
That's what this is, because now we have our Hippo. It's coming in October. You see the bird drinking a cocktail on top of the Hippo. What that bird doesn't know is that it's about to die.
Right.
Which is unfortunate.
No, they can exist. They can cohabitate with hippos pretty peacefully. It's human beings. Where hippos are pretty grouchy.
I see.
Not a well-known fact, but they are vicious.
So if it was a human being on top of the Hippo?
Already would be in 2 pieces.
Okay, got it. StarCityGames.com/game night for more information. As we do get ready here for game number 2 of Michael Majors versus Caleb Scherer, Grixis Control against Storm. We'll have a pretty wide range of decks for people to watch this weekend. Really looking forward to that. A wide range of great players here, too, in Charlotte. 500 and change did come out to the Queen City to do battle. Michael Majors and Caleb Scherer among them. We'll see some Amulet Bloom action, I imagine. Some elves here. A bunch of different stuff. Scherer will be on the play here for game number 2. Storm is a deck that's really trended downward because there have been so many cards that have been banned to slow this deck down.
Yeah, Seething Song got banned. I think Storm advocates would argue kind of out of nowhere.
Yep.
And the deck is still fine. It's still got positive matchups, but it's a lot of work to win with this deck. None of your matches are simple.
It's nowhere near as powerful as it used to be, which is probably for the best, really.
Because you're a Storm deck with less powerful rituals in Legacy, and you have to worry about enchantment removal and Lightning Bolts on your Electromancers. Your opponents can interact much more reliably than they can against the Legacy build of the deck, which is basically just a pile of spells.
Major's going to take a look at his hand. Scherer's already kept his 7. It looks like he's happy, so we're underway. Steam Vents enters the battlefield tapped for Scherer as game number 2 is underway. Major's going to figure out what he wants to do on the first turn of the game. He'll start with just a Scalding Tarn, pass the turn back over to Caleb. Caleb will take a draw step. He does have a Misty Rainforest. He'll sacrifice that, go down to at least 19. He'll get a basic island, so it will be 19. And we'll see if he has maybe something like a Pyromancer's Ascension or a Goblin Electromancer to get this game started. If he can slide through an Ascension, he's in a great spot to start this game.
Yep. Grixis does not get enchantments off the board very easily. And once Pyromancer's Ascension is in play, Caleb has a very powerful late game. He can kind of just sit around, cast cantrips, build up the Ascension, and be able to grind through counter spells and discard spells.
Manamorphose is going to get hit by a Dispel. So Scherer decided to lead with the Manamorphose as opposed to just casting the Ascension, to maybe just try to get a card in the graveyard and just cantrip a little bit, but that got countered by Dispel.
He also may be helping that this would bleed out the Spell Snare, and that could open up an opportunity for Ascension to resolve the next turn, dispel the worst case scenario for the line of play that Caleb took. It's also really bad to allow your opponent to counterspell on curve in this format because of Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah.
Now there's the implication of turn 3, I have to worry about Dispel getting flashed back, and now I'm facing a clock to boot.
Here comes Pyromancer's Ascension. What's scary about this is by playing Pyromancer's Ascension on turn 2, or excuse me, on turn 3 as opposed to turn 2, now you've opened yourself up to Mana Leak.
Yeah.
And Majors is very quickly sacrificing a land here, so perhaps Mana Leak is on the way.
It is very hard to play against all the counter spells that appear in this format. In Legacy, for example, Force of Will counters everything, and Daze is the other really popular one. So, and Spell Pierce as well. I guess those are the big three. Those are pretty easy to know how to play around those. In this format, with Spell Snare, Spell Pierce, Mana Leak, Remand, Dispel, all these cards require different lines of play. It's very challenging to play against all of them effectively at the same time.
Yeah, Remand is another one too. So, see you later, Ascension. Majors will untap and draw. Now things get really bad for Caleb because if Michael has run himself into a discard spell here, really all Caleb has going on is that Pyromancer's Ascension in hand, and now here's a Thoughtseize. So you see Scherer's hand, and you can see just how really weak it is. It's got that Ascension, it's got a Desperate Ritual, a Pass in Flames, a Mountain. But this all goes to the decision of playing Manamorphose on turn 2 as opposed to just casting the Ascension. He's worked himself into this trouble.
Yep.
And the follow-up now is a Nile Spellbomb. Scherer's going to sacrifice this Misty Rainforest in response to get a basic island.
And we're getting to the spot where, you know, Michael is starting to get him covered every which way.
Yep.
He's attacking his hand, keeping him off a critical mass of storm cards to go off via hand. Now with the Spell Bomb in play, the graveyard is very hard for Caleb to use. Even though we're very early in the game and Michael has no clock, the noose is starting to tighten a little bit.
Electromancer in hand here for Caleb. You mentioned that Storm has to work very hard for its wins, given how many cards have been banned from the deck in Modern. Ascension is the easiest way for it to win. Get that on the table and kind of go nuts.
Particularly against Grixis, which doesn't get off the table very easily. It's you know, they need a Cryptic Command it, and then they're probably doing that on their own turn, so you get to redeploy. It's not an easy card for them to beat.
Majors gonna Lightning Bolt that Electromancer. Got to keep that thing off the table. Pass that turn back. Nile Spellbomb with black mana at the ready. Land number 5 there for Scherer, Scalding Tarn. Majors will draw. He's got to like the pacing of this game. Again, much like the last game, now he's just got to get a clock on the table. Doesn't have Tassiger just yet. Scherer gonna sacrifice Scalding Tarn.
And Michael is missing land drops right now, but I don't think he's that worried about it. He's got more counters in hand. He's got a Spell Bomb in play. Things are looking good. Would like to get a clock. Obviously, would like to find some more land drops, but he's got to feel very good about his position right now.
Steam Vents, the land search up there for Caleb. Now, this is still a game that Blood Moon can steal.
Yes, that is true.
You do wonder if Scherer did board them in. He does have 3 copies in his sideboard. He'll start by playing a Gataxian Probe, get an idea of what Majors is working with. You see a Lightning Bolt, a Snapcaster Mage, a Liliana, a Kolaghan's Command, a Dispel, and another copy of Snapcaster Mage. Wouldn't be surprised at all for Michael to just pull the trigger on a Snapcaster Mage here to get a clock on the battlefield.
I wouldn't be surprised. Also, as you mentioned, this is a hand. You look here, no answer to Blood Moon right now.
Yep. Probe will draw Scherer a card. He found a copy of Desperate Ritual. He'll have to pass a turn back. Michael will play a Snapcaster Mage. Just wants to get something on the battlefield. Doesn't get to flash anything back, but he's got to get a clock going. Get some of these cards out of his hand, too.
Yep. And he's got some bolts in his hand to work with. And again, he does have a lot of protection for what Caleb could potentially do because he's got the graveyard shut off. So I like getting the clock going here.
Serum Vision's the draw for Scherer. He'll cast that. Picks up a copy of Goblin Electromancer, now Scry 2. Island and empty the Warrens. Empty something to work towards here.
Yeah, I like Caleb taking the empty here, and this is why I like bringing him out of the board, too, is Caleb can go off with empty the Warrens from a much lower base than Grape Shot requires.
Looks like Scherer's just going to pass the turn back now, going to try to build towards one big storm turn. In the meantime, Major's going to sacrifice that Nile Spellbound. Time for him to get a card. Now he'll fire off a Lightning Bolt. Looking to start clocking Scherer. In comes Snapcaster Mage. Scherer down to 10. Empty the Warrens on top of his deck. Majors, what else does he want to do this turn? Has he found a third land just yet? Looks like no. Now Scherer's going to want to try to find a way to build up a pretty healthy stack here. Again, he knows he's drawing Empty the Warren, so I'd be surprised to see him fire off any spells on the end step. Maybe we're still on Major's turn here. But yeah, he passed the turn. Caleb was just unaware, so. Empty the draw. I think a great place to start is the Electromancer. Forces the action.
And even if Michael bolts in response to a ritual, Caleb still has enough mana to be able to cast Empty the Warrens this turn. And Michael's participation will add to the storm count.
Indeed. Here's Pyretic Ritual. Lightning Bolt will take care of the Electromancer, but Scherer knew that was going to happen. Now there will be a Desperate Ritual here in response. Wants to cast it now because, one, it's an instant, and two, it's cheaper.
Yep. Wants to do that while the Electromancer is still in play.
So there's your stack. Lightning Bolt is still on it. So Desperate Ritual is going to resolve. Lightning Bolt will resolve on Electromancer. Not just yet. Because there's 3 red floating, so -1 down to 2. +3 up to 5.
And Caleb with both Grape Shot and Empty in hand.
Yep. So currently 2 red floating. And Desperate Ritual on the stack. Also, your storm count is up to 4 at this point. And what Major is deciding is it time to dispel? Is there anything I can dispel to stop this? The answer appears to be no.
No.
Major's taking a long look at the grip here. You see the Spell Snare in hand? A very potent card for him.
And from Michael's vantage point, you know, it looks like Grape Shot is sort of lethal here. So if Caleb is going through this level of effort, it has to be for Empty the Warrens. And at that point, there's really nothing to be gained by Michael adding to the storm count. He can't keep Caleb off the requisite amount of mana. And the number of goblins Caleb gets here is very significant.
Oh, yeah, it's almost certainly too much to overcome. Storm count of 5 red mana floating. Able to cast Grape Shot. That'll bring the storm count up to 6.
And he still has the island untapped.
Yep.
So that's mana number 4 for Empty.
Ends up making it a beautiful turn here for Scherer. He can take down the Snapcaster Mage, or he can just send all the damage from Grape Shot upstairs if he'd like to. Doesn't matter a ton either way. And now he does get to empty. This will be for a lot of goblins. 14 to be exact, with Majors at 8.
Now we'll see if Michael has brought in the Pyroclasms.
Yeah, it's that or bust now. He doesn't have a card like Engineered Explosives to get himself out of the situation. So.
But Caleb is empty.
Yep.
I mean, if Michael is able to find a Pyroclasm here, he's in firm command of the game still.
If he's able to find Pyroclasm, this game's over.
I mean, maybe Pass in Flames gives him some hope,
Yeah.
but it's long odds.
Well, take a draw. That's not a Pyroclasm, and we're getting ready for game number 3 here. Caleb Scherer able to win game number 2 over Michael Major. Storm and Grixis Control are all tied up and getting ready for a third one.
And you still saw in that game, you know, Michael's got some cards in his deck that are not great. You saw him there with Kolagon's Command. Not that it's the end of the world. You can tag Electromancer with it. You can make Caleb discard, but the mana to what you get out of it is not great. And it's really a function of the number of even worse cards Michael has in his Game 1 deck, where he's forced to leave in cards like that.
I like the heavy Empty the Warren sideboard plan here, though.
I do too. You know, it's the best way of trying to attack. In my opinion, it's the best way of trying to attack the discard spells. It's very hard to grape shot someone out who's conscious of their life total and attacking your hand, but if your opponent doesn't have sweepers, it doesn't take an empty that's that large to be able to kill someone.
Well, these players are going to shuffle up, get ready for game number 3. Looks like Scherer's happy with this configuration. Major's going to change a few things around. He'll be on the play for game 3. In the meantime, however, we will talk about the Summer Creature Collection here with Star City Games. We've got playmats, we've got sleeves, and we've got bundles.
Yeah, it's all available here. You see the Piglet, the Monkey, the Kraken, and the Deathrite Salmon, all available. Playmats, sleeves, and bundles. StarCityGames.com/creature collection to order your items today, or head over to our dealer booth at any of our opens or any Grand Prix that we're vending at.
We love our Creature Collection, the Summer Edition, and of course, that means the Autumn Edition will be coming soon, which will involve the Hippo.
Very exciting.
Yeah. That means we get to see the full artwork on the Hippo.
I know.
So I'm curious what's going on around that pool.
Mm-hmm.
Because there could be the capsized boat you're looking for.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I had a pretty specific creative vision for the animal and the playmat. It doesn't look like that was necessarily executed upon, but I'm going to withhold judgment until I see the full art piece.
Got to have the full scale.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about. If you are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan here in Charlotte, with Ken Crocker in the sideboard, picking your feature matches and doing your deck techs. Watching Michael Majors and Caleb Scherer do battle early this morning. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGCHAR for your tweets all weekend long. As we've got 9 rounds of Modern action here today, we've got 6 tomorrow. Then we'll cut to a top 8, and eventually someone will walk out of here with $5,000, 25 Open Series points, and invite to our Season 3 Invitational, which is next weekend in beautiful, majestic, wonderful New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. The empirically best state to live in the entire country.
Indeed.
The home of numerous Pro Tour champions.
I'd want to take a look at that data, the empirical data that you speak of.
Yeah, if you care about, you know, education and jobs and quality of life and all that kind of stuff.
None of those really interest me all that much. How are your sports teams?
Remains to be seen.
Not particularly good. Not particularly good.
Remains to be seen.
Now, as far as Brooklyn is concerned, is that considered Jersey, or is that
no,
fair? Okay, excuse me.
That's a different planet.
I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure. I don't know how these things work.
No.
I figured you'd have strong feelings, so I just wanted to make sure.
Totally different planet.
All right. Do you hate Brooklyn?
No.
Okay.
It's just I have no particular affinity towards it. I don't identify it as being any part of my upbringing. No.
Because, the New Jersey Nets moved to Brooklyn, so I thought that maybe there was a New Jersey vibe there, but it feels like Brooklyn just stole your team.
It's good they moved the Nets out of Jersey. No one cared. The location was horrible. It's all fine, but no, I have no particular warm feelings towards Brooklyn.
Majors at 17 from a Scalding Tarn into a Steam Vents untapped. Now he's playing a Serum Visions. We'll see how he wants to scry. It looks like he'll split the difference, one on top, one on the bottom. We're going to head back Scherer's way. Misty Rainforest, among others. He'll start by sacrificing that, go down to 19. We'll see what land Caleb wants to get. He'll get a Steam Vents as well, as he's down to 17. So it's all tied up on the life total front. I imagine a cantrip on the way here for Caleb. Plenty of them in his deck for 1 mana. And he'll have a sleight of hand. So we'll take a look at the top 2, get to choose one. Other will go to the bottom. Looks like he's taking a Shivan Reef. Now we go back to Majors. Majors will draw. A Swamp, a discard spell. It's Thoughtseize. Major's going to go down to 15. You'll find a Past in Flames, a Thought Scour, a Manamorphose, a Goblin Electromancer, a Lightning Bolt, a Desperate Ravings, and that Shivan Reef.
Good looking hand here from Caleb. A lot of redundancy built in.
Much better, really, than any other hand we've seen.
A lot of
from him.
cantrips. Yeah, the last couple of hands we saw from him were basically one cantrip that Michael was able to take, and then a bunch of rituals that led to nowhere. This hand is a lot more resilient. And potentially explosive as well, because you have an Electromancer in the hand.
Yeah. Kind of card that demands an answer.
And as we saw in game 2, even when Michael has an answer on the spot, it might not be good enough. He had Lightning Bolt and died that turn. And Caleb was able to use the Electromancer to very good effect.
Electromancer, a very unique add to this deck. Lets it do some pretty crazy things. We've seen that kind of cost reduction effect in storm decks, for many years. I think of the Medallions, for example.
Electromancer a lot more vulnerable than Sapphire Medallion.
This is true.
But you got to play with something.
Manamorphose looks like it's going to bite the dust. Majors has a follow-up. It'll be another copy of Scherer Vision, so draw a card. And it looks like he's looking at 2 lands, so we'll see if he has any interest in either one of these. It appears the answer is no. Now, Majors, as you can see in his hand, he does have that copy of Pyroclasm. Makes you wonder if that was in his deck after sideboard. We know for sure it is now.
Yeah, I don't know if he went back in between games 2 and 3. I'd be really surprised if he didn't have the Pyroclasm in game 2, but he definitely has it right now.
He's got a Lightning Bolt to go along with that Pyroclasm, with a Liliana, a Dispel, and a 3rd land in Polluted Delta.
And this is a very nice set of cards for Michael to have here. The Liliana makes it very hard to win through Grape Shot because Caleb's hand is going to be so restricted. And the Pyroclasm means that Michael is covered against Empty the Warrens. A card that's very potent against hands like this is Pyromancer's Ascension.
Yes.
But it doesn't look like Caleb has it.
Thought Scour going to target himself. Island's the draw. A Shivan Reef. And now a Serum Vision. So just doing some cantripping. Lightning Bolt's the draw. Scry 2. Desperate Ravings and Manamorphose, the cards that Scherer's deciding between. Looks like Manamorphose is going to stay on top. Ravings is going to the bottom.
I'm a little surprised to see Caleb give up on a Desperate Ravings here because facing down Liliana, I want as much flashback action as I can get my hands on. We'll see exactly what's going on with his hand, but in the abstract, I think Desperate Ravings is one of his better cards against the type of hand that Michael is setting up.
Major's considering Liliana this turn. He's got an idea of what Scherer is working with from an earlier discard spell, so you see him taking a look at his sheet of paper.
Yeah, you know, you get in the spot a lot against a deck like Storm, where if Michael taps out for Liliana and doesn't die, the rest of the game becomes a lot easier to play.
Yep.
He starts pressuring Caleb's hand, and then another discard spell, another counter spell might be too much for Caleb to overcome. But Liliana is 3 mana. It only makes Caleb discard the worst card in his hand on the first turn, and then Michael has no protection. He could die from this spot. I think with Pyroclasm in hand, it's worth the risk. You are covered against Empty the Warrens, so Caleb has to kill you this turn via Grape Shot for this play to backfire on you, and that's very hard to have happen from here.
Majors is down to 12. There is Liliana. Elevator's going up. Both players will have to discard. Majors has made his decision. Scherer needs to make his. A lot to weigh into play if you're the Storm player here, because your hand is going to be slowly disappearing.
Yep.
Desperate Ravings is 1. Lightning Bolt from Majors. We go back to Scherer. Scherer will take a draw step. It's that Manamorphose that we know about. An island. An Electromancer. How bad does it get? We're going to find out. Scherer's going to try to go for something here. Manamorphose on the cheap, so it'll actually be +1 mana.
There is not a whole lot for Caleb to gain in this spot unless he's going for something dramatic. Because he knows Michael's going to be able to untap and answer the Electromancer.
Yeah. Be it Liliana or be it Pyroclasm.
Right.
Either way. Storm counts at 2, a blue and a red mana floating.
So I think were I in Caleb's spot, unless you think there's a reasonable chance you can set up a kill this turn, I think my preference is just to say go and flashback Desperate Ravings. Which is the reason I would have kept the Desperate Ravings from the Scry the last turn. He just needs to build up a density of stuff. Doesn't really matter what it is, but he needs to have a lot of spells to work with.
He'll flashback the Desperate Ravings in his graveyard. It is cheaper because the Electromancer being on the battlefield. Storm's going to go up to 3, no mana floating. So draw 2, discard 1, at random, of course.
I love Desperate Ravings. It feels like a blue-red card in a way that a lot of these blue-red cards don't.
Empty the Warrens, the discard.
I think of Wild Research from Apocalypse. That's a blue-red card. This is a blue-red card.
There's a little white thrown into the old Wild Research, but that is a blue-red card through and through.
Do you like some weird backdoor card advantage paired with a random element? If you're a blue-red person, probably. Oh yeah, that's a blue-red card too.
There's just a lot going on there.
Yeah, I guess technically a Jeskai card now. At the time, a Rack-Evolver.
It still feels blue-red to me.
I think Rack-Evolver. I can't remember.
No, you're correct.
Okay.
Rack-Evolver's correct. Very good, old man. Mr. Rainforest is going to be sacrificed. You saw Liliana tick down and take care of the Electromancer, and then a Blackcliff Cleaves there. Blackleaf Cliffs, excuse me, from Majors. Here's Thought Scour. That'll target Caleb. Sleight of hand. Misty Rainforest to the bin. New card drawn. It was a copy of Desperate Ritual. So many unique card names in this deck. Lightning Bolt. That's going after Liliana. I'm not going to you.
Michael goes, yeah, sure, I'm at 9.
Yeah.
Looks good.
I don't care about your life total. Majors will draw.
Well, that's not entirely fair because if Caleb still has Grape Shot as a way to win, getting to 9, it starts getting realistic, but he's got to get the Liliana off the table as the first order of business.
Snapcaster Mage going to flashback a discard spell. It'll be Thoughtseize. Here's the hand for Caleb. Electromancer, Lightning Bolt, Desperate Ritual, and Past in Flames. Be very interesting to see what card Michael takes here. Snapcaster Mage, a premier threat in this format. One could argue the best card in the format.
I think there's a very, very solid argument for it being the best card.
There goes Electromancer.
I think Lightning Bolt could be in the conversation as well.
They're always paired together, aren't they? Certainly
pretty frequently.
Certainly feels that way.
But I think you see a lot more Lightning Bolts without Snapcaster Mage than you see Snapcaster Mages without Lightning Bolts.
Here's Manamorphose.
But there's a lot of both of them.
Yeah. Gonna get back out those mana fixers. 1 blue, run red, storm count 1. Draw mystery cards. Copy a Pyretic Ritual. Will Caleb try to move up? He's got some rituals in hand, has Past in Flames too. Majors only has 1 mana available. It's that Steam Vents, which could be a Dispel, could be a Spell Snare, could be a Lightning Bolt. Scherer just going to cast his Lightning Bolt on Snapcaster Mage.
And it's tough here for Michael because he doesn't want to really be using counterspells in non-critical spots because of his worry about adding to the storm count.
Well, he used Dispel on that Lightning Bolt. He feels as though he needs that clock out there to try to get this over with.
A lot of information about Caleb's hand also as a result of the Thoughtseize.
Yep. Steam Vent's the draw here for Caleb. It's going to enter the battlefield, maybe. All right, tapped it appears. See what's next here for Caleb. Pyretic Ritual and Past in Flames are the cards that he's thumbing. He's also got Desperate Ritual too. Looks like he's just going to pass, though. Try to pick a better spot. Majors will draw a card.
I mean, in theory, that's enough mana to go and start doing something.
Yep.
But I think he can afford give himself one more turn. One more draw step. Also gets to untap with the Steam Vents. That's a lot more mana to work with. I think now he's going to make his move.
Pyretic Ritual number 1 will be cast. Looks like that will resolve. So 3 red mana floating, storm count of 1. Let the fun begin. Here's Pyretic Ritual number 2, 1 red floating. Looking to go up to 4 red floating if this resolves. Spell count will go up to 2 regardless. That's going to resolve.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking for...
Looks like it's time for a Past in Flames. This will be spell number 3. Majors will take a look. That one's going to get hit by a remand. That's a beating.
Yeah, that is painful.
Yeah. Well, spell count's 4.
A small consolation, I think, is Caleb is getting ready to pass the turn back. Yeah. I mean, he has a shot to go for it again next turn.
Yep.
It's not the end of the world, but it's bad news.
Majors will sacrifice that Scalding Tarn, get a basic island out of the deck.
So this is also meaningful here. Michael going from 10 down to 9. There are 3 copies of Lightning Bolt in Caleb's graveyard. So Passing Flames resolving likely results in a kill next turn.
Here comes Snappy. Scherer down to 6. All Majors can do is pass the turn back. Scherer will draw. I believe a copy of Desperate Ravings is what he's picked up. He'll start with Desperate Ritual, however. That's good. 3 red, storm count of 1. Here's Past in Flames. Nothing floating. It's good. Okay. So let's see what Caleb can do here. Storm count of 2.
I mean, if he's got rituals to flash back, the 3 bolts should be good.
Now, there are at least 2 bolts down there. I'm not entirely sure if there are 3. Here's a Lightning Bolt. And Snapcaster Lightning Bolt. Fair enough. That's going to get the job done. Michael Majors is going to win this match here over Caleb Scherer. 2 games to 1. Grixis Control will take care of Storm. And for Majors, he's off to a great start here. 2-0 with his Grixis Control. I didn't see Jace show up in any of those games, unfortunately, but you have to imagine if it did show up, would have played a pretty big role in things.
It would have been very powerful, certainly alongside Inquisition. Wouldn't surprise me if they got cut out of the deck for games 2 and 3, a little on the slow side. Doesn't play well with counter spells, which Michael has a high priority for, but also we may have just randomly not seen it in any of the games.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if he sideboarded that kind of card out with the looting effect and just being able to flash things back. I think that's exactly where you want to be in the matchup.
Yeah, it's just, you know, we had 3 fairly long games and it didn't show up, so it makes me wonder, but very possible that he just didn't see them in the 3 games.
Either way, Michael Majors does win. Defeats Caleb Scherer. Grixis Control 2-0 here from Charlotte.